The day and age we live in now, if someone comes up to you and says, I think you might be clinically depressed, the proper response is, thank you. Ever think that maybe it's the happy people that are really screwed up in the head? Where's that spin on the situation? Maybe it's those guys. Hey, how you doing? I don't know, I feel great again. Really? Well, that's creepy and weird. Maybe you should be on medication. Clearly you're self-centered, delusional, narcissistic. I don't know, but you're draining me with your happy. Could you move along? Because I'm doing the big work.
Welcome back to No Borders, No Filter podcast. I'm Debra, the host. Today, we will be diving into, I believe we all need. It's about really feeling about what's going on in the world and not holding back. It's time for us to get real that the world is just not where we thought it was going to be, and certainly with my guest, we are from the US, and the cockamamie, ignorant, whack things that are going on a daily basis, we can't help but need a space to feel, but more so talk about it. Do you have anyone to talk about it? I don't. And when I heard my guest have a basically shout out on her social media, I couldn't help but reach out to her and have her want to share the story. So this is something to think about. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with your heart pounding, maybe your tears streaming out of your eyes, feeling like everything is falling apart? Do you have the feeling of the weight of the world, with dealing with maybe the politics, climate issues, and just the day-to-day injustices that are happening right in your neighborhood? Maybe right out your door you see this. Well, you're not alone. And today we're going to talk about it more. So right now I'm going to allow my guest introduce herself. However, I will share her name is Jana. I knew of her when I was living in the Northwest at the time where I was doing my thesis work in journalism with the unhoused community there. And her name kept popping up as someone that I need to meet, someone that goes deep into the local issues that are happening. And our schedules just didn't work out. But here we are over 10 years later, and we finally have our time. So please keep listening because she has a wealth of information to share with us. Jana, please introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, I am Jana Thrift. I'm 53, and I got really involved when I was young, thinking I could make a difference in the world. I'd represent, because I felt my lower income class of people doesn't seem well represented in our country. So I had some really eye-opening experiences that scared me off. When Occupy came along, I was like, well, I really do believe that corporate greed is hurting our planet. And I wanted to be like, if there's a revolution, I'm going to show up for it. So I showed up to Occupy Eugene. I had just graduated.
So just slow down a second.
Yeah.
Where are you? What?
Oh, I'm in Eugene, Oregon. Sorry. I'm like from planet Earth. Okay. So all that happened in Alaska. Then I moved to Oregon, back to Oregon. I was born in Oregon. I lived in Alaska for about 20 years. Came back to Oregon. Okay. Occupy Eugene happened shortly after I graduated from a multimedia degree. And I felt like I could be a documentarian.
What's Occupy?
Occupy. Oh
Eugene.
My goodness. The Occupy movement. I guess I would have this idea that everybody is in the know. So the Occupy movement was just a movement started from a small organization that said people show up to protest against what we see as the things that Wall Street does that is affecting our planet in a negative way. That's what Occupy is to me. And that went from lawyers and different degrees of upper and middle class, I would consider, to the homeless and people that are struggling on the streets. I thought it was fairly miraculous to see different walks of life in the same location trying to figure out solutions for these very deep problems that we are suffering from. So that is what kept me involved in the Occupy movement. And I made this umbrella of all the different things that kind of fall under this category of corporate greed, kind of destroying the things that are worth more than money, in my opinion. So when they closed the parks and said everybody must disperse, and they're basically telling a lot of people that I had gotten to know that live on the street,
it's the only metaphor we have in our public discourse for solving a problem. It's called declaring a war. We've got a war on poverty, the war on crime, war on litter, the war on cancer, the war on drugs. But you ever notice there's no war on homelessness, is there? Nah, no war on homelessness. You know why? There's no money in that problem. There's no money in that problem.
It's time to go back onto the streets where you really have nowhere to go, and we have no ideas for where you're going to go, but everybody go. So, and I stayed at the park. I was one of the last people to leave following the story of a veteran who was there, who insisted that he wanted to have a word with the mayor because he felt like somehow he could say something that help them understand the plight of the homeless, I think. So anyway, I got pretty deep into trying to understand and tell people stories from the streets and really understand the issue, to the point that as a journalist, I actually moved into a homeless encampment to be able to, like, I'm not going to advocate for something I don't understand. And the thing that really came to me was that no matter who you are and how much you're suffering, you deserve shelter. And so I was a very big part of the Right to Rest movement in Eugene, where we pushed pretty hard. And we now have quite a few small encampments made of these little, what they call Conestoga hut shelters or tiny houses. Working to make it so at least people can try to overcome sleep deprivation and then hopefully get that step up they need to get the rest of the way up off their feet. And some of us are super lucky and we have those support systems in our life our whole lives, and some people don't. So that's super hard for me. I get a little emotional because it's, that's my story as far as what came before. So this opportunity came along to help grow a community radio station in Eugene. And we've kind of had our community radio station swallowed up by national news. Our primary focus is for our community to have the information meant for our community. The mission of KEPW was for community voices to be heard that were otherwise left unheard. The work that I did making 200 videos about unhoused stories and unhoused issues and solutions, ideas, volunteer work for KEPW.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that background. It's heartwarming to talk to someone that is not focused on themselves and saying, I'm too busy to even talk, because like to lead into our topic about how we are feeling in the depression. And like, I want you to introduce your story on why I contacted you. But the thing is, I've already talked about deeply with my anxiety depressive disorder. I've done a whole episode on it. But I don't really show, obviously, in that moment when I'm really down, when I'm crying, and I'm working towards that authenticity. I don't think my podcast per self will be doing that, but maybe my social media, I'll get a little more in the moment. With that, I want Jana to briefly introduce this topic that we're going to be talking about, which is, when is it okay to feel this way? And Jana, again, I don't normally see your feeds, to be honest, which is really, I don't know how often you share on Facebook in general, but Facebook has algorithms, and I get certain feeds and everyone gets certain feeds based on those algorithms. But for whatever reason, I was able to, at the right time, see what you see what you shared. And it just touched me deeply because you just put it right out there. So can you share a brief of that what happened and what you shared?
Yeah, so I do not normally make myself vulnerable on Facebook like that. I've been working hard on my algorithms, putting up positive memes and beautiful places in the world, trying to stay focused on that kind of stuff for quite some time. But what's going on in my country seems like it's changed the need of what I should be saying out loud. So I have started sharing things more, but it's usually a share. I usually never put things up about my personal life. It just seems like a weird thing to have all in front of the public like that, even though it's very normalized right now. So I did have a moment. And honestly, if I look back at it, I would call it a moment of weakness.
That's what I said in my podcast when I talked about feeling weak when I first learned I had depression. I think it's a generation thing. We're Generation X, and we don't, we don't do that. We just don't put it out there.
Yeah, it's such it particularly, like, I would put it out there to my friends and family, but on social media.
Right.
Anyway.
Only to the closest and dearest.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had this moment of weakness where, well, really what happened was I woke up and I'm like thinking about things, and I looked at my phone, which is probably a way to stay less depressed, but also I believe in staying informed. So how do you balance that, right? So
that's how I feel. Exactly.
Right. And so
I like being informed. I like being a thinker, woke, educated person.
Right.
Call me radical.
Yeah, isn't that something that being awake or conscious should be a bad thing? But anyway, so I posted an experience that I was having, because after about a half hour of realizing I was having trouble stopping crying, because this is not okay and it's very normalized, and I have a lot of fears, and I would say that probably was what led to my post. And I know that I have a lot of people that love me, and so I probably did expect that I would hear some positive things in return, some ideas for how to address your mental state when you're having a struggle with something that seems very real. And so what I said was the truth, which is that I had started crying and I couldn't figure out how to stop. And I was more or less crying as I was formulating what I thought I might post, which is why I maybe relate it to weakness, but whatever. Anyway, I posted all that. And then I also reflected about something that my therapist had said when, I was like, if you have this impending feeling of doom, she's like, that is a sign of depression. I'm like, but is it depression if there is really doom impending? Like, it's like you feel it coming. I felt it coming for quite some time. And during the first round of what seemed crazy. I mean, I can't believe anybody is like, there's this giant January 6th moment.
Yeah.
And still people support something. I literally listen to people talk about how they care about the planet and they care about the Constitution and they care about all these things. And I don't understand how 1 and 1 doesn't equal 2 for people that I dearly love and care about, that I know are good.
When Greg Stilson actually gains a following, he has a cadre of bikers who support him.
They're tough guys, right? Where are the bikers for Trump?
And they're at the rallies, and they're there to make sure that nobody heckles Greg Stilson.
Get him out of here! Get out!
Knock the crap out of him, would you? Seriously.
The man had the high, hard, pumping delivery of a revival preacher. You could see a fine spray of spittle from his lips as he talked.
So I announced that I'm running for president.
What are we going to do in Washington? Throw the bums out. A tremendous roar of approval ripped out of the crowd.
We're going to drain the swamp. Drain the swamp.
My worry at the time that I wrote The Dead Zone was that somebody like Greg Stilson might actually get elected and rise through the ranks, become president of the United States, and start World War III.
The missiles are flying.
Had I really known the future, I could have had Greg say, well, I've got a button and it's bigger than your button.
My button is bigger than yours and my button works.
My destiny.
The first scene in the book is Greg Stilson at the beginning of his career, and he's selling Bibles, actually. He's a door-to-door salesman.
The Bible! Nothing beats the Bible. Nothing beats the Bible, not even the art of the deal.
He's a huckster from the word go. And in that sense, He's got
Posted that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that was jam packed. And for me, and I think for many others, it was a way to connect. Like, we are told, I know what you're saying. Like, you don't want to put things out there because there's trollers and just as bad people, like, not bad people, but, they just want attention. So they'll just write something mean back or whatever just to get attention. But I think that we are using social media incorrectly, and we're making this illusion on Facebook and Instagram and all these spaces that everything, like, I'm okay, life is like, all this
This
shit's
is what I
going
ate for
on,
dinner.
but I'm okay. And I don't want to upset you. And, la, la, la. And I think that's just the wrong way to go. I'm not saying we have to go always deep all the time, but, the only way that I'm going to get to know someone is if they're going to be, a little authentic, share something that I can feel like a human being, because I believe that if we were a little bit more real with each other on social media, then we wouldn't feel as lonely as we all do on a regular basis, an increasing heightened feeling of anxiety and depression due to social media. Maybe we should be thinking about, well, maybe we should share with our friends at least what's going on in our minds. Like, we will get into that Trump topic of like why 1+1 doesn't equal 2, because I don't get it myself. Like, it's so out there. We are in a visual world at this point. We're not photoshopping this scenario and putting it into a newspaper. It's actually right in our faces, and people are just like, I don't know, like whatever's going on up here versus what they see here is just not connecting. So what was the one thing, or was it you feel like was it a cumulative that just came over you, or did something happen the day before or that week that brought on that, crying, just being totally flooded with emotion? Was there anything, or it's just everything?
It's interesting because I believe that we bring a certain amount of baggage into our day, right? And this is what I was taught in anger management when I went there with my 3 teenage sons. So, you start with a certain amount of baggage, and then there is usually this thing that it really hits you emotionally. And there's probably 2 things that day that I could really touch on, but there's definitely all this baggage that came first. And one thing is the obvious. I mean, we have like this thing going on in this country where every single day you're seeing all of these different things happen. And these are just the things that are being highlighted. There's a lot of things happening in the background too, that our democracy and the survival of a lot of people that depend on things like their social security to stay housed. And, and there's a lot of fear. And I think that we pick up on that from each other for sure. There's also a particular incident that I think is really a super big deal going on, where this person that had a visa but participated in an anti-war protest last year, Khalil, was taken from his 8-month pregnant wife. And I participated in an ACLU discussion about a Know Your Rights and trying to understand, what does that mean if, for no reason but the fact that he practiced something I value greatly as part of my American dream, which is the freedom of speech. He practiced the freedom of speech, right? And now he's targeted, and he's a legal person. He has a visa, and he was just the first person I heard of this happening. So that was about the same time that had happened, which in my opinion was like top of the list red flag for us in this country. Like, we're not talking, and I have a lot of compassion for anybody. I don't care if you're an immigrant desperately trying to get your kids to safety, like whatever. But we're talking about a lot of people being like, oh, the illegals. Well, this is somebody with a legal visa that really was targeted because he used the freedom of speech. And that is a big, big deal, in my opinion. So that was probably
it is a big deal.
One of the things. And then I went with this elder woman. I was helping her, and she needed to use the restroom. And we pulled up to a community center, and they were just packing up after an obviously very large Trump rally. And there was a giant banner in the front that said U.S. for constitutional rights or something, for our Constitution. I can't remember exactly, but that was the point of the banner. For me, I'm like, do you not see this Constitution that we are holding on to by a shred, it seems like to me, being seriously
very
violated by
thin.
the person that you are promoting here?
Mhm.
And that, it was definitely a big trigger for me. I ended up, like, I'm with this water woman from a Native American church, stepped outside of my van while she was using the restroom, and I just burnt this smudge and truly prayed for this situation and for everybody involved, because I think that it is, I mean, it's just as sad for people that don't know their way enough to realize how wrong it is, what's going on, and be the people committing what I consider atrocities, or the people that are supporting it without really maybe understanding what we have at risk the same way I do, maybe.
Yeah.
So, I really was triggered by those two things happening in the same day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's my trigger.
Well, thanks again for the details, because like people, as you say, want to listen to sound bits, but if you really want to get to know somewhat like why people have such strong emotions, you need to allow them to get it out and hear what's going on. And it's that situation you talked about, but that all the years of everything else, probably that this was just like the cake topper of everything else, and your body needed a release. Was your husband there at the time when you were having this
Well, we
moment?
happened to be sleeping in
Yeah.
I was on vacation, to be honest. I was
Mm.
taking this special person whose dream was to go to Hawaii. I had the blessing of having a little money come into my life from a long lost relative. Long story. Anyway, I promised her that if it had and when it happened, I would take her. And so we went for her 77th birthday to Hawaii, her lifelong dream to be there. And in doing that, my husband and I had given them the private room, and we were sleeping in a dorm in 2 separate beds. So I'm not sure how in the know he was. I kind of got up and left the room at a certain point because there were also other people in that dorm. So when I say crying, I probably I wasn't wailing. It was tears would not stop. Probably, that small, pitiful sound that you make when you can't stop your sadness from continuing.
Oh, I do it. I do it on a kind of on a regular, not, but to that extent, what you're talking about, yeah, that happens, but sometimes you need the sound, your voice to come
Next
out.
time, I hope I have more
Yeah.
privacy. But I did get up and leave the room and go out to the parking lot
Okay.
to finish my post, to be perfectly honest,
Okay.
and then call my representatives. So ridiculous. 5:00 in the morning, Hawaii time, by the time all that had worked its way through. But I felt like I really want to hear that the representatives that I voted for that say they believe in the same things I believe in, I want to see them on my thread. I want that, stream coming in, that they're doing their very best, to figure out how to save the country from seems like a takeover.
Well, yeah, and we're going to go into that.
Sorry.
But the good news, no apologies. I love everything you're saying. But there was some good news today. The Wisconsin Senate seat went to a Democrat.
After all that money, Mr. Musk could not buy
20 million, I believe he put into it, right?
a lot
20
of
million.
money. Oh, he gave $1 million checks to individuals revolving.
Well, during the campaign in Wisconsin again,
And revolving around the Wisconsin thing, I'm pretty sure for voting. There's so many different things, but my understanding was that revolving around that Wisconsin campaign, he put a lot of money into trying to change that seat.
Let's get into that a little bit. The current administration, what they're actually doing, because we can see it in the news, talking the talk. Republicans aren't a party of hiding anymore. They started back in the Reagan time, the trickle down, which the big thing that is the catalyst to what everything's happening now, to defunding mental health and the veteran programs and things that put, as you say, so many more, again, patriots on the streets and without their needs. And we can start there, but they've been slowly crawling to this point. This is not let's just say, this is not something that's just really out of the blue if you're staying in the know a little bit of what America's system has become for the last 40 plus years, I guess after Carter,
Yeah, I think that
and
things went
it's
downhill.
disgusting.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's been going downhill for the majority, but the illusion has been that things are getting better for most, because people will be like, economic thing, things are going up and this and that, but there's just so much more to it that people just don't see. And unfortunately, because of the news, just we're in a state of misinformation and no guidance on how to navigate for the average person. It's causing more issues because this is why the sound bits that Trump does, that all his party does, gets in the ears and the minds of people who are not able to differentiate between things. And they know it. They know how to play the game. And unfortunately, why Democrat values, let's just forget about parties, Democrat values are getting lost, is because we're, as a party, we're not doing the right sound bits, or we're not getting the messages out there in a way that counteract all this other stuff that's going on. I remember a few years ago, Elon Musk announcing that he went from Democrat Party to the Republican Party, saying that the Democrat Party was angry and he didn't no longer wanted to be part of it. Like, what do you mean? I mean, everything that comes out of Trump's mouth is angry and negative and sexist, misogynist. I mean, you're a smart man, Elon. What are you talking about that the Democrat Party is being too angry for you? And now I understand. He was setting himself up for this moment right now. That's what it sounds like to me.
Sure does seem like it. It sure does seem like it. I mean, some of it just leaves me speechless. First of all, I just want to clarify. Yes, I was correct. I looked it up. Those checks were revolving around the Wisconsin judicial election, where he gave an individual person $1 million check.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly it was for voting. And my understanding is that
yes,
he was in fear. There are some fear, that is that bribery? Like, what is happening, right? And that they changed the promotional thing that they were promoting it with and took out a small piece that said about the voting piece, for the exact reason that he knows exactly what it was. It was this idea that his money could buy an election, which it seems like in some ways maybe that is what happened and how Trump made it into office again. This person from out of this country said this to me once, and they said that they feel like in America, people believe something even when reality is so obviously different sometimes. And
it's a cognitive dissonance.
Yeah,
maybe?
Exactly. And it seems like, we all are raised to believe in freedom as what this country was founded on, but we also negate to recognize the fact that that was not freedom for everyone. That was freedom for rich white men, really, landowners in particular. You didn't get to vote if you weren't a landowner and you weren't white and you weren't male. And that's part of what the country was founded on. But what happened was that a lot of people who care a lot put a lot of energy into making some major changes in this country and finding freedom for Black rights and finding and really believing in the ideals that were presented to them and really changing things, including environmental issues, including all of these different movements that have gone on and people that have put their life work into trying to care about different things. Not just in our country, but, if we're talking about the U.S., I feel like that has happened here. But I know that it is all about an unlimited amount of money that somebody can give to somebody as a representative, which is part of the struggle we have right now. And so there's just all of these things that have been building up and building out. There's a problem with the government, right? We definitely see there's a problem. And it reminds me of Occupy, where people have all these different ideas about how to solve it, And I think people that voted for Trump really believe they're reaching out, trying to find this something different that will solve it. And I just try to go by my experience and the facts and how I see things laying themselves out. And when I listen to the man talk, I'm like, I don't feel like he's sane. And I felt like that right from the beginning.
The experts called him, extreme narcissist or whatever their clinical terms are, incoherent, possibly have some Alzheimer's or other related, but more so, they did not say he is fit.
Love and care about that. I know we're good people. So that is a struggle for me and probably a big part of where my mind was when I...
Yet another psychiatrist says that the evidence of Trump's dementia is, quote, overwhelming. Remember, we spoke to Dr. John Gartner a few weeks ago, who says there is a neurological smoking gun here. And now we have yet another medical expert who says the same thing. This is from Newsweek. There is, quote, overwhelming evidence that Donald Trump is suffering from dementia, a leading psychiatrist claims. Dr. Lance Dodds, a supervising analyst emeritus of the Boston Psychoanalytic Society and Institute and retired Harvard Medical School professor, was among those recently quoted by Duty to Warn. Quote, unlike normal aging, characterized by forgetting names or words, Trump repeatedly shows something very different. Confusion about reality. And this references Trump confusing Obama with Joe Biden. And he goes on, if he were to become president, he would have to immediately be removed from office via the 25th Amendment as dangerously unable to fulfill the responsibilities of office.
For being in a leadership position. So your opinion is based on actual science. The experts did go on camera to share that. And yet the root issue of, let's say, government and how someone like him gets in is we have guidelines on how to get a job, even in this day and age. You have to be qualified in some way. If it's not college education doesn't necessarily need it anymore, but certainly like if you've been working as anything for 10 years and you can go there and prove, I've been doing this job for 10 years and, I'm qualified to do it. You can be considered for the job. He has no background in government. He was found to be, a felon this time. He has 34 indictments. So, he's been guilty with, rape or related with the porn star. I mean, there's just so many things. Him being not even be able to handle money in his own, businesses. He's been bankrupt 7 or 8 times at this point. So he's a felon who is, sexist, misogynist, rapist, supports the Proud Boys, KKK, all of these things, which, by the way, I heard that the KKK supported him in this election specifically.
Terrifying.
We can go on and on and on because this is all not opinion. And my show is about, if you have an opinion, it's based on at least experience, if not evidence and facts. And we have all this information about our leader, and yet by law, he is allowed to run for president.
I can't believe it. You can barely get a job at McDonald's with the kind of...
He could barely do a job at McDonald's. If you put him in, I'm just saying, let's just say this. If he was even that fryer doing the fries at the window, I guarantee he would burn himself or whatever. He would not be able to function because he has no practical skills on these things because he has his women and servants to take care of him. So he has no idea on basic things. But we're giving him the most powerful role in our country. The rules of becoming a president need to be updated. I'm sorry.
I can't even believe there aren't rules. I found out that they could have imprisoned him and he could still be the president from prison. We don't have any rule against that.
I mean, it's insane. I'm just saying, the main rules or the main things that you have to be president of the United States is 1, you have to be over 35. 2, you have to be a born citizen of this country. That's it. That's it for the most powerful position in the country, let alone being the representative of our country to the world. That is all that is required.
Martin Luther King, John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, etc. There was a tremendous discord in the country. People were rioting against the Vietnam War. My husband now had to go into the National Guard. It was a terrible time for people. Yeah. And that is true. And we did get through that. But right now, We're talking about the lack of a constitutional republic. We're talking about no checks and balances. We're talking about the fact that half the country watches fake news. We're talking about the fact that the Republicans at that time got rid of Nixon, and the Republicans were not complicit in this charade that's going on with Trump right now, and just rubber stamping every illegal thing that he does. So that's why we survived it, because the Constitution and the country held up in those days. It is not holding up now.
The lack of safeguards is watching what's happening right now with the lack of safeguards is startling. To know that we have so little safeguards that somebody can come in and just say, we're not going to have a Department of Education anymore. We don't care about our child's education or anybody else's education anymore.
And I remember hearing him talk about defunding and allow the states to do whatever, they want. And people in the audience didn't have any reaction. I'm like, do you have any idea what's going to happen? When you don't have regulation on education, you're going to bring back, what? You're going to put up a cross in the classroom, not to separate church and state. Like, what do you think is going to, happen to your children's education without someone overlooking what are the basic things?
We support these programs for a reason. And it's an awful lot. It's an awful lot.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, we're going into it, but it's just like how we're not having the checks and balances. As you say, I mean, we have all these branches. How is everything, like, by the snap of the fingers, these things being defunded, these things, dismantling the Smithsonian, the Kennedy Center, like everything, like there's no checks and balances on anything that he's doing right now. And again, as you say, we have a checks and balance that the leader of our country is not a king or a queen. They have to follow these regulations. But the thing is, Democrats, we know, have no power in any of this. So maybe they're just giving the thumbs up, go for it. I don't know what's going on. It's just
there's people. I mean, the guy that just spent 22 hours talking because he felt like the only power
Booker.
he had was to keep it on the floor for as long as he was physically, humanly able. I think we have more power than we may realize in some situations and less than we should in many others. I do really believe that one of the problems that we're having right now is that this executive branch is literally saying, I don't have to respect the judicial branch whatsoever or listen to anything the judicial branch has to say, which is super problematic because that's a huge piece of the checks and balances on the executive branch, right? That's what that branch is for. And if you talk about people being not only not qualified to take all these positions that they have been given, but the opposite. If you put people in charge of something that they have been outspoken about, they would like to see the demise of that department. Don't kid yourself that the intention is to demise the department. I mean, it's interesting, the reality of the situation not really being quite understood and I think a lot of people think, oh, we really want smaller government, right? That piece of the Republican agenda does make sense. There is a lot of overspending. There are things seriously wrong with the way things are spent. But I don't think you're not taking the word of the people who understand how the system works and then going in and trying to get rid of things that can be got rid of with the integrity of the department still intact. That's not what's happening. And that's really the biggest part of the problem, besides the fact that somebody unilaterally has the ability to just say, I want that over, freedom of the press. I think it's over. I'm going to put somebody in charge of the FCC that doesn't want to hear but one message, and the message that I want to hear, and that's the only message that should be allowed to be heard, is what I'm hearing. And for me, freedom of the press is that another very important piece of the checks and balances system. So if you say, I don't want anybody to hear anything but my narrative, then you are basically trying to demolish this giant piece of our checks and balances that is super important. And I know there's a lot of people trying to do what, almost flailing to figure out, what can we do? I've been involved with social organizing and all these different people trying to help all these different causes, be it the cause for our planet or for clean water or for unhoused people, that, figuring out how to have solutions that work for everyone and get people the human rights that everybody deserves, all of these different things. And I don't think people quite understand how much of that, if you want to talk about a real trickle down effect, that is going to be the real trickle down effect. When you start eliminating the parts of the federal government completely that support all these other things that you will depend on when you become an elder that can't work anymore, what will happen to the money you put into Social Security that you thought would make it possible for you to remain housed. And so that is what I think this whole trickle down effect, you give all the money to the rich people and then they're going to pass out a pittance? Doesn't seem to be
they're
working.
going to just share it. They're just going to be kind and just,
they're just becoming more and more greedy. They want everything, not just, and I don't even understand the mentality of it. Like why somebody would want it all and then see a fellow human being that can't afford to put shelter over their heads or feed their kids or protect their family from violence.
Well, that's the thing that I talked about with a previous guest, is about how disconnected wealthy people, for that matter, my experiences, I don't see it even in the middle class, everyone is worried about themselves. It really takes a concerted effort to put yourself in the shoes of people, like you're talking about, the most vulnerable people. They have no clue what is really happening. They might hear a statistic, but again, it's just a piece of information to them. It has nothing to do with who they are. And we cannot build empathy and compassion from just hearing sound bites of information. You need to go in and see what's going on. And that's why I'm a heart for Bernie, is because he's been for his whole adult life going in and talking to the working people, going and marching with Martin Luther King, going in and being immersed in the realities of what's happening in America. And the reason what fuels him is that because he continues to do that, he has not sat back as an 80-year-old man, just being like, oh, I've done my job and, I do have enough money to retire. He could easily be enjoying his life, but his life purpose to me is exactly who you are. He is so angry, but even though he shows it in, I can't imagine him not having moments where he's just like you, just in the background, just losing his shit. Because I don't know how someone could be so involved and so loving and caring genuinely about something and not be mentally strained, frustrated, losing, his control. And I know he needs to keep, strength for all of us. But the thing is let's get back to the topic. It's when is it okay to be, as you say, when is it okay to have an outpour of emotion? I mean, in America, that's part of the problem. I think we have drug problems and many other mental health issues, is because we're told to keep things in. Even though we're more open about talking about mental health now, or ADD, or whatever all these mental issues are, we're talking about it. But I don't see an outpour of, again, seeing these people really in those moments of vulnerability, as you say, because Americans think it's weak if we are emotional to a certain point. And as a woman, we're, being told it's certainly not okay to be emotional. We can't be leaders. We're too emotional. We'll press the button in a moment, the nuclear button, if we just have
I have
our
to tell you,
periods.
I would not be nearly as scared if Kamala was in office right now as I am about that with this guy in office.
No shit. But we are such a misogynist, sexist society. I mean, she has all the qualifications. And on top of it all, she actually had policy in her, plans. Whereas, again, Trump would just say, I'm going to defund this, or I'm going to replace Obamacare. I'm going to do this. He never shared his policies. If I would love any Republican, educated one, because there's educated ones, please share a bit with me and us on his policies, on how he's if you're going to dismantle something, what are you going to put in place that helps you,
Yeah.
And it's
I think Project 2025 was his
that
unveiling.
was the scariest thing.
That
Ever.
And if you talk to different groups, they say it's what's happening right now is almost a play-by-play moment from that, even though he tried to separate himself from it so heavily.
He said, "Oh, I don't know anything about it."
Yeah. But in many ways,
sure.
it seems to me that the things he's doing follows so closely that it's hard to believe that really wasn't his agenda or the agenda of the whoever he's following. You know, I hate it. I truly believe that the fact that we have allowed such a crazy moment to happen, that we have what to me is like the fear of Nazi Germany all over again in our country, honestly. And I felt that way from the very beginning. Like, why does this seem like this is the preambles that was probably what it felt like when you were in Germany before all heck broke loose, you know? And I felt like that for a long time. That situation, though, in many ways is a symptom of a much deeper problem that we've had festering for a very long time. The fact that people can say that they care about all these things and then witness and support somebody that is doing things that seem very much the opposite of what they say they care about. And I remember reading about this concept where we have ideals, and when we have representatives, we want to believe that they are going to stand up for our ideals, and we vote for them based on that, right? And then when somebody says something bad about that representative, that you have bought into that. It's almost like when you buy into a car and you're like, this is my baby, you know? You feel like it's attacking your personal ideals when somebody says, no, that person isn't standing for that. And you become defensive and people get possessive, and capitalism has soured a lot of what I believe could be people that would have a lot more compassion for one another. Because if the drive is to be the one that can have it all and as much as you can possibly get, and it doesn't have to just be enough for what you need to be comfortable and live happily with your family, you want to be driven for more and more. And it seems like that kind of greed is encouraged by capitalism.
Absolutely. Well, it depends on, well, I agree 100%, but I'm not an expert on the terms of capitalism and things like that. But there are different types of capitalism.
That's true.
This form of capitalism
the form
is
of capitalism
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. The idea that, you know, that we don't believe that what we're putting our money into is meant to go into a pool that will increase the beneficial environment for everyone to live in. That is not something that we seem to believe in. And we believe that government should be smaller and we should be paying attention to our budget more. But how do we cut that budget? Do you cut your nose off to spite your face? It's a saying for a reason. Anyway, I'm like, get back to the topic at hand.
No, it's okay. I love everything you're saying, and it's pertinent, it's poignant, and excellent. But
it's the things that play into my mind when I relate to what I see as super scary, and I fear for the future for my grandchildren. You know, I want them to live on a planet where they enjoy the same things that I was blessed to enjoy. And we can't say that they're going to be able to go to the woods and enjoy the trees if we cut them all down.
Because they might not even be there.
Yeah, I mean, we're opening up all these lands for corporate money, and I've never been a person that has believed that money is my solution. I have not been married to the same husband. I have been in some bad relationships and just figured out how to make it. I believe that you give thanks for the universe and the things that will bless you and take care of you. And as you do that, you give yourself in the ways that feel right and good in your heart to your community, and it comes back to you. Like, I'm driving a car right now that was gifted to me by a woman who ended up with an inheritance that she was going to give her car to someone else. And she chose me because she knew that I had been giving a lot to my community for a long time. And I didn't give to my community because I expected that, but that's the natural cycle of life, in my opinion. Like, you take that extra time, even when you feel like you don't have the time, and you balance it as good as possible, because it's easy to become imbalanced. And I'll be the first to say that I am a constant effort with that. But I think that, give up an hour of my favorite show once a week so that I can attend something that seems like it could actually make a good difference in the world, go out and participate in a nonprofit that's trying to help others. And there is no doubt in my mind that the cycle and circle of life will come back to you, and it'll come when you don't expect it. It doesn't come from the same direction you gave, but it really does. And I've always believed in that. And I truly believe that is how, sharing is how we save, is a bumper sticker that I had on my car.
Well, what you say is like, I believe in the universal laws, universal rules, which is to me really the laws of nature. Because it's for everyone. We are all connected to nature. So like my belief system are much more part of the universal rule because it's evident as well. It's just,
you'd get along with my daughter really good.
And it's just, again, I don't believe in, like I talk about this, I'm not a person that believes in something without evidence. I have to have evidence-based, experience-based, science-based things. I believe in the 21st century is a time for us to be enlightened, but we are going back to the world. And this is not just America. We are going back to a dark age, a very dark age. We have not learned our lessons. Our country specifically is erasing history. And certainly I'm from Jewish heritage, like the Holocaust, it's like, it's coming back, you know what I mean? And not just the Jews, it's coming back in many ways. A lot of countries in Europe are becoming fascist, like Trump, very much about, this, let's say a white supreme or whatever the belief system is, but still people want to wipe out the Jews. How many are left of us? Like when all the Jews, let me ask this, when all the Jews are gone, who are you going to blame after for all the problems of the world? I mean, if we're not there, then maybe you'll be like, well, maybe that's not the problem. I mean,
right.
I just, it's scary because like we are, as you say, like I want to bring this up, the tipping point of our democracy right now. And I didn't think that in my lifetime, that I would be sitting here today talking to you and saying that based on all that we've just talked about, what the dismantling of everything, the loyalists being put into high positions in our country that have zero qualifications to regulate any of the things. They're just there to agree with him. All of this is all pointing towards a fascist, oligarch, monarch type of system. So when, Bernie says that it's because we have the evidence and we have the definition of what an oligarch is. And when you have someone working as your, like to me, Elon has like Trump, as a puppet, I think that, it's like Trump knows that he has to do everything that Elon says at this point. Elon's got him by the balls basically at this point. To see Elon in the Oval Office with his son, whom the son mocked Trump
Jasmine, my daughter
face,
showed me that.
and Trump had to take it. Even though he said something, still he had to eat it because of what Elon. It is quintessential like mafioso kind of shit going on right in our face. And when we are allowing it and accepting it, even though we don't like it, and it's so painful, as you say, like the pain in my heart with women and women's rights, the pain of dismantling the Kennedy Center and the arts. I'm an artist. I studied art. That's freedom of speech to me. Art challenges what you see and what is going on in the world. We are the storytellers of what the world is. That's why we love music that tells a story, because we are the ones that are listening to what's happening in the world, and we're creating something for people to challenge our brains on what is going on in the world. I mean, it pains me. You talk about crying, like I remember when, Bernie even lost, I was hysterically crying. I feel so alone, feel like I have every right to feel like, let's just get back to this. I feel I have every right to feel depressed and anxious and worried and sad about this stuff. I am a human being and a very imperfect one. But by all means, like as Mark Maron, that comedian I just shared with you, it's like the people that go walking around and smiling and saying, why are you unhappy? I think you're the ones that need the medication. I think you're the ones that need therapy, because if you're not feeling something about what's going on in your country that is totally inhumane, as you say, no human rights, like lacking human rights. A person, Elon, saying that we don't need empathy, that's a weakness. And all of these things, if it's not paining you, then I think you need to go see someone. That's how I fucking feel at this point. I'm tired of being the one that's going to therapy and trying to deal with things in this world. No, I might still need it, but by all means, if you are not affected by this, you are a narcissist. You are, part of the problem. That's my thoughts. I'm not saying we have to walk around being depressed all the time or crying all the time, but if you don't do something like, as you say, like you put it into positivity, like which we'll get into soon, is like what we can do when we feel hopeless. But I mean, if you're not a human being and breaking down and crying, as Jana had the strength to share with her friends and support group. I mean, I don't respect people, to be honest with you. I don't purely respect you if you're walking around with like Susie Homemaker 50 smile on your face being, hi, how you doing?
Right.
Like, I don't know. So in your mind, do you think that it's okay for people to have these breakdowns publicly without feeling shamed?
Well, I definitely do not think people should feel shamed for expressing their feelings. And I think that it's funny because I once had a conversation with somebody who was like, you're so always about your feelings. And I really searched my soul about that, because I think I am a very passionate person, and I definitely think my feelings matter a lot, and they guide me up and they guide me down, that's and they are a result of my environment. And I also create my environment partially through the way I navigate my emotions. I think that's the one thing we'll take with us out of this world. That is our spirit and our heart. I think that it's okay. I embraced and more feel welcome to share their feelings. And I think a lot of people have come to the understanding that this kind of long generations of this is how you should be, and you stuff all that down and you don't speak. A lot of us recognize that is not working and not a really good way to grow and learn and be human on this blessing that we've been given of this gorgeous planet. So I think feelings are so much more important and valid. I think they make people uncomfortable sometimes. And
that's what I think that I'm saying. It's like that. It makes them feel uncomfortable. So they want you to
and there's different things.
Take it somewhere else.
The person is like, can I please fix it? And then you get someone who I'm a solution person. What can I do to help this be better? But sometimes people just need to vent and be able to share how they're feeling, and just have somebody that's a good listener, and being there for each other in different ways. Whatever way is most needed is how we get more in tune with each other. And caring about each other's feelings, I think, is a way to really begin to understand solutions too. Like I can't create solutions for somebody who's had experiences that I've never had. That's why it makes absolutely no sense to have somebody who is raised by somebody that's a billionaire and had a very entitled life be able to say they know how to solve the homeless problem. You have to go experience that. And then you get a much better understanding of the things that are the daily struggles and the ways by which people can find what they need to get past whatever that issue is. So like lived experience is key. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that's Yeah, it's the biggest thing that's missing in this administration. Like they're like, oh, I know we can gut all these things because we have no experience of the value.
Knowledge of even these, they don't even have the knowledge to understand what they're doing. Meaning, like,
Right.
again, when it comes to a woman's body, they have zero knowledge of
Right,
a woman's body. Other than where to put it in them, I think they don't know anything else.
It's so harsh. It's really harsh. And I feel.
But it's true. I mean, that's how they talk. It's like they have no clue that the people will, again, he'll say it, you saying Trump will say it, but then it's the people that will say, oh, he's just joking around, or he doesn't mean it, or whatever. Like, that's what they do. But if it was Obama or any other, it was like.
Yeah, I had a first husband who said a lot of things that were meant to be joking, that were very hurtful things. And the truth is it came from somebody who had very little respect for women. And so you can even say, oh, this is a joke, but it comes from a place that usually starts with a lack of respect, because you don't make a joke about things that are serious or that might hurt someone unless you have no respect for the results of your words.
So I want to start leading out, and I brought up about the tipping point. Do you think that we can, like, I'm just saying, not hope. Do you think we can recover from this tipping point of where our country is at right now and where it will be in 3.5 years when he's finished, if he doesn't die first? But I'm just saying in general, do you believe that it is possible for America to get back to some normalcy, some form of normalcy and democratic system?
Boy, think and hope. What a fine line that is.
It's a difference. It's a big difference.
There is a difference, but like, where do you sort it out in your mind when you're in the position that we're in right now, I guess is what is happening in my head, is how do I figure out what that line is?
I know. I just made your brain go poof.
Yeah, you could see my brain just exploding right then.
Yes, I saw the smoke. Yeah.
Well, the first thing I'm inclined to say, I usually try to go with my gut most of the time, is I believe in miracles. And I do believe in miracles. And so maybe that's hope, maybe that's belief. But I think it's a long, hard road, but I thought that a long time ago,
yeah, me too.
If you get involved in caring about things in the world and you start considering yourself, whatever it means, when you say social organizer or activist or whatever that means, you get involved with your community and your planet enough to really want to put some time and energy into making things better. At least for me in the last 15 years, it has been hard to see. And I have this theory that it's not about whether the whole world changes because of the things that I create or the things that I do. I do it for my spirit. I have no idea what's going to happen to the spirit when I move from this body. But what I do know is that if there is something left on the other end, I want to look back and be like, I didn't turn a blind eye. I did what I could. I tried to find balance. I appreciated the beauty. I took time to love and be loved by many, many people, both family, by blood or otherwise. I have respect for all the creatures in the entire universe in general. That I know that the most traumatic experiences I've had in my life have turned into miracles, and my life has gone directions that I didn't even imagine could be that good. So when I think about this situation, that it can be turned around. It's similar to climate change. I believe we have a lot of power in this country. When it comes to the thing about capitalism is you have to have consumers. And for me, I really believe in this idea where we vote with our money. And if we don't support these people, and you can see it happening in ways where, like, Tesla is suffering. They're suffering because things.
Turn on the light. Yeah. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
So sorry. I didn't consider that was going to start happening.
It's okay. The thing was I was watching an interview. It was, again, a happen chance. It was some ex-CNN correspondent that was interviewing, I don't remember who's doing a podcast, and he brought up a very objective view, as much as his feelings about what Elon is doing right now is not what he agrees with. What he does support separately is that his cars were to be more green and more, eco-friendly and to support our planet. And it is a shame that what's happening with Tesla in that, I'm just saying, in that respect. If Elon would have just stuck to what he knows, which is that, and get out of, this power hungry, maniacal, situation where he has no, to me, no credibility, which I've known for a long time. I'm like, he's just another rich white guy. I said, he has enough money to make the differences, the changes in our country, and still have plenty left over. He could help the homeless people. He could help all the problems we have and then some. Same with Bill Gates. But they don't. They could, but they don't. It's what are they doing now? Like, that's what I want to ask people. What are they doing now why are you revering them? Just because they're a success story financially does not make them someone to revere. I don't understand this reverence to these wealthy people. What are they doing that makes the world a better place? They have the power to make a difference. And I'm not telling them to give up all their money. I wouldn't give up all my money. I mean, I need money to live, but I have the mentality of what you have, is that if I had this power, if I had these resources, I would want to lift people up. I would want to make a difference for others.
I can't even,
because that's what we are supposed to be doing. It's like, it's part of the universal law. What you get, you should give back. It works this way. It is part of nature. You give, let's just keep it simple. You give a plant water, it will grow. You know what I mean? Like, we can't just look at that plant and be like, why are you turning brown on me? Why? Well, because I have to give for it to give back to us. It's that simple. And it's been time after time, centuries of the same thing. And we still fall into the same trap. This success person's going to really help me out. Okay. It's the blind. It's so blind. And it's enraged. That's the word. How about this? How do we stay enraged without losing ourselves in grief?
Well, I practice my grounding techniques regularly. And try to, keep things in perspective. I go to a therapist that's super smart and amazing, that shares different ways for me to work through my emotions. I read self-help books that kind of give me clues. I actually really appreciated that post because there were some people that really stepped up. There was some genuine ideas for how to navigate. And I think that it is important to remember that this is too shall pass, all those different things, there's going to be a different moment tomorrow. So what do I do today? I focus on today. If I stay in the now, I can focus on what I need to do that I think is important and can make a difference, and not focus as much on my fears about what happens tomorrow and my upsetness about what happened before. And I think that is really key for being able to keep things in perspective. But to also, it's okay to feel, if we're going to take it back to that, it's okay to feel and to really be able to feel that rage and sit with it and understand that there are things that are very worthy reasons that comes into my heart, but not to let it be who I am, because I have to remember that the goal is to create something good. And if I become part of the hate, then I'm not able to focus. For one thing, I really lose track of myself and what I really care about and what I really want to be, the change you want to see in the world, So I just, forgive myself when I fall down. I try to embrace what I love about this planet. I take breaks. And that is the honest truth.
Okay.
I definitely take breaks. It was really hard to take this last break, even though it was one of the more special things I ever did in my life, to give somebody that had been giving their whole life. I am the balance in the universe right now, With that in my heart, I had this moment where I just couldn't quit crying. And I feel like there's a sadness that I'm sure the whole universe has to be experiencing right now. And those of us that are have our hearts wide open tend to
Yeah.
end up in a place where that is felt more. I think that it's really important to just keep your eye on the prize to a certain degree. And my prize is not, I am going to change the whole world. It's like one little thing at a time. It's challenging, but then I get like a little piece of a moment where somebody says, this gave my kids a feeling like somebody cared about this situation that involved their father. That was said to me just today. And it's like, that's what I'm here for. The thing that I created can help make a child feel like the world is going to care about something like their parent. That is what we want to do for each other. And that is my end goal.
Yeah, thank you. And I do want to emphasize what she just said is you need to take care of yourself in order to take care of others. So if you do feel like you're on burnout, you need to take care of yourself. Yeah. You need to water yourself. Yeah.
Serious time being like, what is my balance? I have a calendar and all the things that I want to do kind of lay out into a weekly calendar. And, that includes free time. That includes the things I want to do for my community. That includes the things I want to do with my family. That includes the things I need to do to help take care of myself. And because as much as it's, all corny and people say it all the time, but, it's hard to give if your cup is empty.
Well, it's but these corny expressions are simple ways to remind us that this is what works.
There's a
period,
reason that they got.
There's a reason that they exist. Corny expressions will be here to stay, and they are needed in our lives. And also, we need to laugh at things a little bit. I think that's also, as you say, to take care of ourselves. We need to laugh. We need to find things, even in the. To me, watching Elon wearing a cheese hat was like, I laughed. You know what I mean? It's just like, you are desperate, man. You are so desperate. We got to find the little things to,
just the fact that you'll
little
get better
gems.
news from your comedians these days than you can find from.
You do get better news. Satirical news is where we get it from. That's why Jon Stewart, he was the one that revolutionized the whole thing. And thank God he's back. Thank God. He's back. Yeah. So I'm going to list a few things that will help us to be less hopeless are calls to action. Like you talking about all the things you do, which is extraordinary. And I wish that we could be more in a world of people like you than people that are just so self-involved. Boycotts of corporation funding, as we talked about the corporations, we can help them fall out. I mean, Australia had a 72% decrease this past week in Tesla sales. And so they are celebrating that. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. Contacting representatives, protests, donations, spreading awareness. I'm doing that right now. I'm trying to spread some
on that.
Awareness.
Hard at work.
Yeah. Engaging in political conversations. Yes. Even when it feels draining. Question: how do we balance taking action with not becoming consumed by it, which is what we just talked about? But talk about that with your friends. Talk about the things that matter. But, we can't be not talking about it. And then we can't be living in it 100% of the time. We must find some kind of middle ground. And finding, as what Jana was just finding, small personal ways to fight back without letting it destroy your mental health. Can you share maybe 1, 2, or 3, whatever short things of the small things that people can do to start feeling like they are contributing without feeling powerless? What are some small things that people could do? Like real things.
Right. I think that one small thing is to figure out a nonprofit in your community that you resonate with, that you can offer a very small amount of time to. I think that is kind of there's people who have laid a lot of groundwork for there to be places for people to arrive and do things that can make a difference in a lot of different ways. The thing that went on with Bernie Sanders, and although it breaks my heart how twisted the system is, that it ended up he couldn't even get nominated, which is a systemic problem. But those kinds of things, after that happened, people came to understand I need to become more involved in my local politics. Figure out carve out this small window of time in your life that you could give to something you think that will make a positive difference in the world. I think that that is probably one thing. Small things, just having your voice heard, like being brave enough to open up in certain situations and say,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
what doesn't make sense to you or what makes sense to you, you know, like it's
Exactly.
really hard. We've got the one class I did the worst on in college was speech. I hated that thing. I have put
Yeah.
some work into overcoming that
Yes.
fear. And it's part of the reason I do youth radio is because I think that it's one of the single most things that can really help our future generations and any generation or person is to be able to feel comfortable enough in their own skin that they can share what is important at a moment that can change people's lives. I was once told by somebody, you know, at the end of this, we always ask people if they have something on their heart they want to share. And a lot of people think about something and they don't share it. But the thing is you never know when that one little thing that you say could make such a big difference. And sometimes people are still like defensive. Absolutely not. But what I noticed in my sons, raising 5 sons, was that most of the time they're like, absolutely not, Mom. But years later, there's this inkling that they've thought about it. And I think that we can lay seeds and we never know where that stuff goes. And we don't have to have an immediate solution or immediate, we're all into instant gratification. But that's not what you're looking for when you lay seeds. You know, you find a way to express yourself and don't expect instant gratification and just know that we're all making a lot of ripples in the water.
Amazing. Here it is, younger generations, words from the wise. Listen to your Gen X. Listen to your Gen X. We've been around now long enough. You know, instant gratification, there's a time for a place for, but there is time for deep reflection and action. And if you really want to be a voice on social media, start listening to me, start listening more. Talk less and listen more. Ask, you know, people some good open-ended questions to listen and get some, you know, ways of dealing with your feelings, because I know the younger generations are having major issues with that. But it's time for the, you know, parents and the teachers and the leaders to help guide the people with their feelings instead of just jumping on TikTok to escape it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that great insight. I want to thank you, Jana, from the deep of my heart. This was probably the most nurturing, validating, wise interview so far, and I've only done a few. I've enjoyed all of them, but this was really a good emotional, spiritual, mental release. My lifestyle is very transient. I'm nomadic, and therefore I don't allow deep relationships to build in these places because I move around too much. But my dream is to always have a couple of people that I can make sure that 1 + 1 = 2, but I need to be around people that still believe that.
That we're not alone. We are not
We're
alone.
not alone.
One of my favorite songs is by a woman named Jules Graves, and she says, there's only a fine line between alone and all one. And if you think about it, it's just the L.
That is so corny and awesome. At the same time, so true.
It's a good song. Jules, she's a Northwest musician that isn't like super famous. So
I'm going to lead out saying one thought. It's okay to cry for the world. But after the tears, let's get back up and do something about it. I just want to point out that in my YouTube description, I will have contact information for Jana if you are interested in learning more on how you can get involved to, you know, take more actions. If you are from the Northwest, you know, to reach out to her and, you know, help her, you know, get things, you know, better for you. And of course, I put in links to other sites to go deeper into topics that I talk about and my brand. I have a book listed, for example, called The Twilight of American Culture. It really made a big impact on me like around 20 years ago. And it certainly will give you some more insight on what we've been talking about with the crumbling of democracy into something else. Remember that the best way of learning is to do. So go out and get your hands dirty. I'll see you soon. Bye.
It's easy to sit back and be critical. It's hard to put yourself out. It's safe to be analytical, risky to let the feelings out. The strongest thing I ever done is be vulnerable with someone. There's only just a